almost always comes heavily caveated and qualified in ways designed to caution consumers, such as myself, from jumping to conclusions, while at the same time helping us at least to gain a little bit more awareness. An example would be a report based on, quote, an uncorroborated source of unknown reliability. In layman's terms, I would call this a report based on rumor. Now, I, for one, am very glad we live in a country where even information of unknown reliability is passed up the chain, because that allows people like myself, daily consumers of intelligence, to begin to form a picture of what might be going on and the steps that might need to be taken if the information turns out to be accurate or part of a larger pattern. But let me say it is extremely rare to come across an intel report that is concrete enough to constitute a smoking gun. Intelligence is much more a game of disparate pieces of information, many of which don't seem to fit together, at least initially. Keep in mind that people doing nefarious things don't want us to know about those things. It is often only after one reads a full body of intelligence over time that one can approximate an actual picture of what might be happening and why. And there are glaring historical examples, Madam Chair, even when that picture finally emerges of the intel being just plainly wrong. The war in Iraq comes to mind. I'm just finishing. In this context, I would make one final point. Intel that gets leaked and is then taken out of context, for example, a report from a single uncorroborated source, if that report instantly becomes taken as fact, this can actually be prejudicial to Canada's national security. I believe Jody Thomas tried to make this point yesterday. There is nothing our adversaries would like more than to divide Canadians and have us call into question the very institutions that keep us safe and free, including our electoral processes. We must take all suggestions of foreign interference seriously, even where we only have partial or dubious information. And let me assure you, we do just that. But the larger point is that intelligence needs to be seen for what it is and what it is not. And if that doesn't happen, we will all end up much worse off. Thank you.
Thank you. And because one person is speaking of the two of you, I was able to provide some leniency, and both of you combined would have had 10 minutes, and you are under that 10 minutes. So thank you for those opening comments. We will proceed with 6-minute rounds, starting with Mr. Cooper, followed by Mr. Turnbull, puis Madame Normandin, suivi par Mr.
Ms. Normandin, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Julian.
Chair, I'm going to direct my questions to Mr. Stewart, since he is the first member of the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol Election Panel to appear before this committee. Mr. Stewart, for you, Madam Chair, did the panel during the 2021 election refer any intelligence or other information that it had to the RCMP or the Commissioner of Elections Canada?
For the record, Madam Chair, Mr. Morrison was also on the panel for the 2021 election.
Sorry, I stand corrected.
No.
No.
Is my answer.
So Mr. Morrison said that foreign election interference is a serious matter, and that partial information, partial intelligence has to be taken seriously and looked at carefully. So I find it incredible that nothing was passed on to the RCMP or the Commissioner of Elections Canada, notwithstanding the fact that based in the Rosenberg report, it's evident that there was information the panel did have about foreign interference. At any time, did the panel consult with or report to the Prime Minister, the PMO, or any minister or minister's office?
No.
Did the panel alert any candidates in the 2021 election that they may be a target or a victim of foreign interference?
Not as such. There were, however, regular briefings of political parties. representatives of political parties by officials, not by the panel itself.
So, under the cabinet directive, it provides that barring national security considerations, that candidates who are a target of foreign interference be informed. Why didn't that happen when the rapid response mechanism, which provided and shared information with the panel about disinformation that on Chinese language social media platforms targeted against conservative candidates in the Lower Mainland, including former Member of Parliament Kenny Chiu, in the face of that information, why wasn't Kenny Chiu and those candidates informed, given having regard for the cabinet protocol?
Well, your question really embeds many assumptions, sir. The panel, to go back to your prior question, was briefed regularly by the RCMP and intelligence agencies, so it wasn't really in the ambit of the panel to refer things to the RCMP. Secondly, based on what the panel was being informed, the panel did not come to the conclusion that there was a level of foreign interference which it would impact the integrity of the election. Having said that, on a regular basis, as part of the process, political parties were briefed about.
But let me be clear,
information to hand.
under the cabinet protocol, it's not about the overall integrity of the election. That's under Section 6 of the protocol, which is related to informing the public. I'm talking about the section related to informing candidates, which is a different section.
And I am saying, sir, that parties are briefed regularly by officials about what is going on, and to the point about what you have assumed to be the case, that was not being told to political parties by officials.
Well, were you aware that the Conservative Party of Canada alerted the site task force that there was suspected foreign interference by Beijing targeted at Conservative candidates? Did the site task force relay that information to the panel?
I am aware that there was a meeting after the election with representatives of the Conservative Party on that point.
No. During the election campaign, the Conservative Party of Canada informed the site task force about interference that was suspected by Beijing targeted at Conservative candidates. Was that information passed on to the panel? Yes or no?
The panel was briefed by intelligence agencies and the RCMP on the best information they had available.
Was that information passed on to the panel? Yes or no? Were you aware, was the panel aware that the Conservative Party had provided concerns about interference targeted at Conservative candidates? Yes or no?
The panel was briefed about activities that were happening in ridings that were difficult to attribute to foreign interference at the time, and that were potentially of interest. It did not rise to the level of the panel adjudicating it as a matter of foreign interference in the election of a riding or at a national level.
Well, it's really not comforting to think that in the face of what we know with respect to the types of disinformation that was being circulated, that the panel didn't even see fit to inform any of the candidates. And so I guess what did the panel do with that information? Just said, well, it doesn't meet some threshold, and therefore we're not going to inform the public, we're not going to inform candidates, we're going to keep everyone in the dark. That's completely unacceptable.
I will ask Mr. Morrison or Mr. Stewart to answer, please.
Can I just say, through the chair, that in the online space, one needs to be certain that the disinformation circulating comes from abroad, and that it is sponsored by a state. That's what would constitute foreign interference, as opposed to just the rough and tumble of an electoral campaign. We were aware of what I think the rapid response mechanism called activity or unusual activity, but we were advised by the rapid response mechanism that it was not possible, and they did read everything in Chinese, that it was not possible to attribute that to necessarily to non-Canadian sources, non-Canadian citizen sources, or to state-sponsored sources.
Thank you. Mr. Turnbull, up to 6 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to both the witnesses for being here today and for the incredible expertise that you provide on these matters. Greatly respect your work and your service. So just maybe, Mr. Morrison, you could just give us, I feel like with the last line of questioning that there seems to be a misunderstanding perhaps among my colleagues around the table as to what the protocol is and how the protocol and the panel functions and works. Could you give a really brief overview of that, Mr. Morrison?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. The panel exists by design only during the caretaker period. So the relevant agencies and the relevant ministers are live to the possibilities of foreign interference before, during, and after the writ period. But during the writ period, the caretaker period, where parties are out campaigning, the panel functions as a mechanism of last resort in case something rises to the level that it would threaten the integrity of the electoral process, either at a national or individual riding level. So the experts, the information, comes to the panel via the site task force. As I said in my opening remarks, that involved during the time of the election, after a number of preparatory meetings. I believe there were 4 meetings before the election and 6 meetings during the election. The site task force was providing daily updates as to what they were seeing or what they weren't seeing, and we had weekly meetings to ensure we had the same understanding of, or a shared understanding of what the site task force was reporting to us, and then we would deliberate on what we had learned.
Thank you. That's a great overview. And just to be clear, that panel and protocol were set up in 2019. So prior to that, was there any mechanism like this that would operate, to identify and notify the public of a potential threat during an election?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. And as both of you were members of the 2021 panel, my understanding is you were briefed by security officials at every meeting during the election. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And the panel relied on the input from our security agencies through the site task force to inform its discussions and deliberations. Is that all right?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And we heard from the director of CSIS, Director Vigneault, that he had concurred with the findings of the panel that no attempted foreign interference during the election rose to the level to compromise the integrity of the election. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So I want to quote something from Ian Shugart, who you mentioned in your opening remarks, Mr. Morrison. So recently, Ian Shugart, former clerk of the Privy Council and member of the panel in 2019, was on CBC and said, and I quote, "Yes, we would have been prepared to intervene and to go to public and alert the public of a situation had it arisen, even on the basis of 1 or 2 ridings, or if something had been national in its scope. It would have depended on the nature of the intervention But we need to understand that often intelligence information is partial and it is incomplete in the sense that you have indications of interest, but it stops well short of having any effect. Do you intervene because the other side is interested? And even that the other side may be at work? No, you don't necessarily, because you may simply want to gather more evidence, or you might have evidence that is clear enough about what their intentions are. So the intelligence agencies watch and they pay attention and they continue to gather information. But we on the panel at no point in the 2019 election were presented with information that said this has the potential to distort things in such a way that the outcome of the election, either locally or nationally, could be affected. But our mandate, our remit, would have allowed us to do so, to do interventions on either scale, either local or national. So, Mr. Morrison, given your opening remarks, I think you've already made some comments in relation to the partial nature of intelligence being pieces that we're putting together to approximate some conclusions. And do you want to react or comment to Mr. Shugart's quote or statement?
No, I think it's self-explanatory for those of us who consume intelligence on a daily basis. It really is a mosaic that helps us weigh what we learn against all of our other sources of information and then provide advice to the government.
So you agree with his statement?
Thank you. We will now, Madame Normandin.
Ms. Normandin, 6 minutes, up to 6 minutes. Thank you very much. Mr. Morrison, I have to come back to what you said in your opening remarks and the question and answers that were just heard here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I analyze your comments, you seem to be taking the information provided from CSIS with a grain of salt, and it seems that you are substituting your expertise to some extent for that of CSIS and the information that they get. Am I wrong, or is there some questioning of the competence of CSIS here?
Madame Chair, merci beaucoup.
Madam Chair, thank you for this question. I want to be very clear about what I said earlier. I certainly was not questioning the competence of CSIS.
On this very important point, I will respond in English. The point I was trying to make is that intelligence reports that come across my desk every morning and that have come across my desk every morning for 5 or 6 years come with qualifiers and caveats. They are not an account of what happened. They are often an account of what somebody said might have happened. The qualifications and the qualifiers and the caveats come as part of the documents that our intelligence agencies produce. And that is to help us as consumers understand the reliability of what we are reading. So they use phrases like a new source, or a new source of unknown reliability, or a single uncorroborated source alleges that. That means that one person said it and they have not heard it anywhere else by any other means. So that is how intel comes to those of us who read it on a daily basis. The point I was trying to make is that when leaked reports are circulating and those caveats are not taken into account, people can get a very distorted view of what the national security community in this country actually believes.
Merci beaucoup pour les...
Thanks very much for those clarifications, but I still understand, I believe, that your vision of CSIS, you seem to be kind of substituting your expertise for theirs. Am I correct in that?
In two ways. What I tried to say in my opening remarks, Madam Chair, was that I'm proud to live in a country where we have intelligence agencies that are on the job 24/7 and reporting what they hear. They have various means to hear things from human sources, from electronic sources, and so on. And it is their responsibility to pass that information up to people like myself and others who are the senior members of the national security community. The information always comes with, I never know who it's from, but it is characterized as to its degree of newness or reliability and what we know about the source. And sometimes it openly says, we don't know why the person is, we may be being told this to influence us rather than to inform us. So, the consummation or the daily receipt of intelligence comes with grains of salt. I'm not myself putting those grains of salt in. The second point that I would say is that it is one input into how people like myself form a worldview and use that worldview to inform the government. And here I would say, I would point to the example I used in my introductory remarks, that there was a consensus view that Saddam Hussein, consensus view in the Western intelligence community or the U.S. intelligence community, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. That was wrong. So it is entirely appropriate for intelligence to be one stream of information that goes into the decision-making process of policymakers.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je vais continuer au prochain tour.
Thank you very much. I'll wait for my next turn.
Mr. Julian?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I believe it was Mr. Stewart who answered Mr. Cooper's question about referring intelligence to the RCMP or to Elections Canada. If you saw the previous panel with Elections Canada and the Commissioner of Elections, identified half a dozen areas that are touched by the allegations that are contained in the reports by Robert Fife and Stephen Chase and Sam Cooper. And each one of them does constitute a violation of our electoral laws. So I'm concerned if that intelligence wasn't passed on to Elections Canada. Elections Canada and the Commissioner of Elections can take action on intelligence, and they gather the evidence. That's part of their job. So why would the suspicions or allegations not be passed on to Elections Canada? Is it because there was a verification done internally that showed that there was no evidence at all of some of the allegations?
Allow me to clarify my prior answer, which was to the question of whether the panel had referred information to the RCMP. And my point at that was to that we know the panel receives information from the RCMP. And indeed, it receives information from other sources. And prior to the meetings of the panel, which at times included the Chief Electoral Officer, there was a process of gathering and distilling information by the site task force. So I am not privy to the discussions the site task force had with the office of the electoral officer or the Commissioner of Elections, but I am confident that the information that was in the hands of our intelligence community that was deemed to be of importance was shared.
With Elections Canada?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback. You had mentioned, Mr. Morrison, about threshold, and this is a question that has come up before. That there's an issue of a threshold in terms of a national campaign and having an influence in a national campaign, but there are also thresholds at the riding level, and I wanted to know at what point. Whether there is an evaluation of something that can have an impact at the riding level and what that threshold is,